Good morning. Here? Good morning. My name is Erlen Zygmuntovich, currently the Aleph teacher at the Westside Yiddish Shula. And it's my pleasure today to announce my former student who was in base several years ago, and the young man with whom I worked in preparing his bar mitzvah speech today. This is Alex Segal. One anecdote about the end of his base year: he told me that he hoped to become a Yiddish teacher. Now, I don't know if he will maintain that aspiration or whether that will change, but I can assure you that in the process of preparing the remarks which he will share with you today, he was very, very sincerely engaged and committed to the process of investigating the meaning of Jewish identity through the lens of the experience of the African Lemba community. Like Sylvie, he has an interest in science, and he'll share the synthesis of those interests with you right now. Alex, go to it.
Good morning. What is a Jew? Is religion what makes us Jewish? Is it being part of a race or an ethnicity? Is it being part of a nation that makes us Jewish? Is it being part of a culture? These questions took on a new meaning to me when I went to an exhibit in the Natural History Museum about DNA. The exhibit stated that DNA of all human beings, no matter what skin color, are 98% alike. When I was leaving the exhibit, my dad saw a book in the gift shop. The book was about an African tribe called the Lemba. What makes them special is that they claim to be Jewish, and the genetic tests were used to try and prove their claim. My dad thought that I might be interested in the topic, and bought the book and the video on the Lemba, and that's where it all started. The reason I chose to learn more about the Lemba for my bar mitzvah is because the way they define their identity and the way others define them as Jews made me think more about my own identity. I thought if I learned how a black African Jewish community defined their Jewishness, I could find out more about myself as a Jew. Religion is a primary way to define a Jew. Religiously, Jews are monotheistic, which means they believe in one God. Central to this belief is the covenant, an agreement between God and the Hebrews. In this agreement, God gave the Hebrews the 10 Commandments and promised to protect his people and provide them a home in Israel in exchange for the following of his law. Writings such as the Talmud record changing interpretations of Jewish law. Over 5,000 years of writing and thinking has led to a body of work that is considered at the center of Western thought. The concept nation is another way Jews have defined themselves, and the definition has changed over time. Before the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, there had been no actual Jewish nation for thousands of years, yet many Jews considered themselves and were considered nationally Jewish. They were viewed as members of a nation scattered throughout the world. They were part of a virtual nation. For example, Jews from Poland considered themselves Jews, not Poles. When I say Polish Jew, I mean that he or she is from Poland and is nationally Jewish. In 1948, the Jews established their own nation, Israel, but there were many Jews who were not part of Israel who still consider themselves Jewish. This identity of a stateless nationality has lessened in modern times, where non-Israeli Jews to a great degree have affiliated their nationality with the countries they live in. Culturally, Jews don't have to be religious. Cultural Jews take pride in their identity as Jews. They study the history of the Jews, but without any religious base. They celebrate holidays and even bas and bar mitzvahs in a secular manner, like we are doing today. Being culturally Jewish means you learn and sing Yiddish songs or carry on spoken traditions, tell or hear stories, and speak Yiddish or Hebrew. But the cool thing about being culturally Jewish, the thing that I really like about it, is that there are no strict rules to follow. I consider myself culturally Jewish because I celebrate holidays and study Yiddish. I know other people who do more or less than I do, and they are welcomed at the Yiddish shul. Some of them are not Jewish by biology. Some of them are even religious. Everyone is welcome here. Some people define being Jewish racially. According to Jewish law, if your mother is Jewish, then you are also Jewish. According to the Nazis, Jews were a race. If you had one grandparent that was Jewish, then you were considered a Jew, even if you did not practice Judaism or had converted to a different religion. One problem with the biological definition of Judaism is that people from any ethnic or racial background can convert to Judaism. Another problem with identifying Jews as a race is that since the diaspora, Jews have lived in all over the world and intermarried with a variety of types of people. Biologically, there is no way to identify Jews as a race, although as the understanding of the genome develops, there are methods amounting to suggest that certain genetic patterns are associated with certain ethnic groups, in this case with the Lemba tribe, and was used to significantly establish the validity of their claims. The Lemba are a tribe of black Jews who live in the northern part of South Africa and the southern part of Zimbabwe. They claim to be directly descended of the 10 tribes of Israel. Their claims in racial diversity amazed me. I wanted to find out as much as I could about them. What makes the Lemba Jewish isn't only their belief, but also their way of practice. The Lemba circumcise their baby sons, they don't eat pork, they keep the Sabbath, and they follow strict purity and funeral laws. What is surprising to me is that many of the Lemba don't see themselves as a religion at all. To them, Lemba is a cultural group that follows traditional practices and group ethics. Despite the understanding that the Lemba culture has an ancient Hebrew origin, some Lemba live as Christians and Muslims. The question I asked, is their beliefs and Hebrew customs really enough to prove that they were Jewish? I was not alone in this question. Many groups, both Jewish and others, could not accept the fact that black people were direct descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. They felt that the Lemba were an African people who picked up some Jewish traditions from European settlers. There was another way to prove that the Lemba were Jewish. That way is modern genetic science. Within the last 20 years, a genetic signature or pattern was found in the Y chromosome of Jewish men, specifically of the Kohanim, or priest group. The Cohens were direct descendants of Moses' brother Aaron, who have special rights and privileges among the Jews. Their title is handed down from father to son. This genetic pattern they have is called the Cohen modal haplotype. 50% of Jewish men who say they are Cohens have this pattern in their DNA. 10% of Jewish men who are Levites or Israelites also have this pattern. The Cohen modal haplotype was not present to any significant degree in the DNA of non-Jewish men. Isn't it funny that while Jewish law defines being Jewish by having a mother who's Jewish, while genetic science can identify certain Jews through their fathers? Well, here's the reason why. In the human genome, there are many patterns of genes that seem to have no functional value. These are called junk polymorphisms. If these junk polymorphisms are in the Y chromosome, they can be passed down from generation and stay true to their pattern. They very rarely, if at all, recombine with the genes of the female. They get handed down generation to generation intact with very little change. They become a useful genetic footprint. Although this is an unusual event, when it does happen, these junk polymorphisms are called unique evolutionary polymorphisms. This is true of the Cohen modal haplotype. Think about it. The Cohens pass their priestly status as well as their Y chromosome to their sons. The genetic signature stays true for hundreds of generations and thousands of years. Dr. Tudor Parfit is a reader in modern Jewish studies and chairman of the Middle East Center at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. He lived among the Lemba for many months and believed their claim of Hebrew roots. When he learned about the Cohen genetic pattern, he asked his friends among the Lemba if they would take the test. Parfit swabbed the tissue inside the Lemba's mouth of many tribe members from the priest group called the Buba, and also from the regular tribesmen. He sent hundreds of tissue samples to the Center of Genetic Anthropology for testing. The results of the testing stunned the world and even made the front page of the New York Times. Not only did the Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, but they had the same ratio as Jewish men did throughout the world. 50% of the Lemba priests, the Buba, carried this signature, just as 50% of the Cohens did. 10% of the rest of the tribesmen had the gene, just as 10% of the Israelites. Parfit was right. The Lemba were direct descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. Parfit really wanted to find out where the Lemba came from. The Lemba had a story about their origin. We came from the north, from a place called Senna. We left Senna. We crossed the Poisella. We sailed down the coast of Africa. There, we rebuilt Senna. Parfit discovered that the Poisella is a place in Yemen. He then found the city of Senna in a remote valley in southern Yemen. In approximately 721 BCE, the Assyrians invaded the northern kingdom of Israel and deported the 10 lost tribes of Israel, marking the beginning of the Jewish diaspora. It was thought that all those Jews assimilated and lost their identity in foreign countries. At that time, the ancestors of the Lemba moved to Yemen. Then they sailed down the African coast to Zimbabwe. Parfit actually went to the places mentioned in the Lemba legend and retraced the steps of their voyage. I tried to imagine a teenager who was a member of the Lemba. I couldn't think of anyone as different from me. I'm an American, and I live in a world city, New York. I use a lot of machines and technology in everything that I do. From what I read about, the Lemba most live in small villages in a beautiful country, are farmers, and have different kinds of wealth. Separated by 12,000 miles and 2 continents, we are as different can be, and yet we are both Jewish, and more than that, we consider ourselves cultural Jews. I had to try and see if there is a way to find someone who I could talk to from the Lemba. I went to my dad. We discussed it a while and decided to try and find an email address. We sat down and searched the web, and in a few minutes, we found a site with an email address of a member of the tribe. The person I contacted is Gedzu Mathiva. He is one of the Lemba. He is the son of the president of the Lemba Cultural Association. He lives in a small rural town in the northern province of Africa, near the city of Louis Tricard. I would like to read you his description of the land where his people live. The land of the Lemba rolls with green, rocky hills and has a lot of rich farmland. Farmers are always worried about drought and the famine that follows it. I asked Gedzu a lot of important questions in the first email. I asked him how he found out he was Jewish before the DNA test he took. He said that he knew he was Jewish because of oral traditions. He said the story of the Lemba was passed on from generation to generation. I also asked him if he belonged to a synagogue. He told me there is no synagogue near him. He said the closest one was 500 miles away from him, and that surprised me a lot. He said that he went to Shabbat services in his father's yard. I wanted to know about what he thought his religious homeland was. He believed his homeland to be the land of Israel. I never thought he would believe Israel to be his homeland because he lives in South Africa, and I assume he was born there. When I compare him to myself, it would be like me thinking my homeland is Russia because one of my grandparents are from there. I realized that part of the way he defines himself as a Jew is also by his sense of nationality. He joked with me a lot in the email. In the first email, he said, "Do you know how to kosher kill a goat?" When he said that, I think he meant that as a joke because he knows that in New York people don't kosher kill goats, and that he learned how to. In the second email, answering the question of what he does on his free time, he says he visits his relatives. Then he told me that you never know who your relatives are. What I think he meant was that since being a Cohen means that he has thousands of relatives because of the diaspora. In the first email, I asked him if the DNA test said that he wasn't biologically Jewish, would he still practice Judaism? He said that he would practice Judaism because the tribe didn't ask for the DNA test. They were offered it. He also said that no matter what the test had shown, he would still know that he was right, and that wouldn't change his identity at all. I realized that the racial or genetic definition of being Jewish was not important to him. This made me think that if I had taken the test to see if I was Jewish or not, and it said I wasn't a Jew, Would it affect my identity? And I said no. Over the last few months, I've thought a lot about those African people whom, if I cannot call brothers, I can at least call cousins. I've thought a lot about how amazing it is, after 3,000 years, that modern genetic science has confirmed a connection with our ancient descendants, who we read about in our Bible stories. When I read about the Lemba's long journey down the east coast of Africa and their building of the ancient city of the Great Zimbabwe, I thought of the great journey my great-grandparents made from Europe to America. I also thought about my own background that Gedzu Mathiva and his friends would probably be very interested in. I wonder if he ever ate potato latkes, or tapped his feet to klezmer music, or heard any of the great Yiddish writers, Shalom Aleichem, Israel Peretz, or Mendelech Sefirim that Baba Razel used to read to us at the show. Does he have any relatives who perished in the massive mechanized destruction of his entire people that we know now as the Nazi Holocaust? What I've learned from all of this is that, for better or worse, 1,000 years of European Jewish history belongs to me, and that I will not forget it. Thank you.
Teacher, and I teach Yiddish and Jewish history to the school. I'm very proud of both my students, and it's been a pleasure to see them grow up. I'm going to introduce their Yiddish poems for you today. Sylvie's topic was about Jewish law and medicine, and it was hard to find sophisticated poem, let's say, about that topic, even though there's so much in Jewish culture about health. You're always saying, sei gesund, live well, be healthy. But I picked a poem that really reflects a current vogue that's coming back into medicine, which is about hands-on healing, or how important getting well is related to your connections to your community and to being touched and feeling the love of the people around you. So Sylvie is going to read a poem called Wenn mein Mädel is krank by Mata Solinsky, and it's about how the love of her mother, makes this child get well. And Mata Solinsky was a Yiddish teacher and poet who worked at the education department of the Workmen's Circle in the 1950s and 60s. And then after her, Alex will read a poem called Unser Schiff by Morris Rosenfeld. And this is a poem that speaks about Jewish identity and how steadfast and rich it is despite all the turbulent vicissitudes that Jewish life can present. And Unser Schiff is written by Morris Rosenfeld, and he was an American Yiddish poet who lived at the turn of the century. He was an important Yiddish labor poet. And now, with further ado, this one? Oh, okay. Is this good?
Wenn mein Mädel ist krank von Mata Solinsky. Wenn mein Mädel ist krank, nimmt sie Medizinen, weiße Pillen von Hals, rosa Aspirinen. Von der Fläschel angetrankt, was der Doktor hat verschrieben als. Meint ihr, als das wird ihr gut, von dem Doktor Zettel, oder weil sie liegt und ruht, 5 Tage Bettel? Nein, es wird ihr gar nicht gut, von die alle Sachen. Etwas, was die Mama tut, kann gesund sie machen. Die Mama hat ein Herzig Kohl, geht sie mit dem ein, als sie Meise von der Mo, schläft die Kleine ein. Die Mama hat eine wehe Hand, glätt ihr Kopf, mit die Weitigen benannt, fällt die Hitze ab. Die Mama hat ein warmes Maul, und sie küsst sie lang, auf von was es wird ihr wohl, und sie ist nicht krank. When My Little Girl is Sick by Mata Solinsky. When my little girl is sick, she takes medicine. White pills for her throat, pink aspirin, and liquid from a bottle that the doctor has prescribed. Do you think she improves from the doctor's prescription, or because she lies and rests 5 days in bed? No, not from all these things, but something that her mother does can restore her health. The mother has a soothing voice. A sweet story from long ago makes the little one fall asleep. The mother has a soft hand. She caresses her head, and the pains and fever go away. The mother gives loving kisses to her daughter. From all these things she becomes better and is sick no more.
Unser Schiff von Morris Rosenfeld. Wie viel Schiffen gehen unter Griechen nicht dem Breg? Unser Schiff geht stolz und sicher, Gott gefährlich ist der Weg. Sie lacht aus die größte Sturms, in die Jammen wild und tief. Unser Schiff ist fest und ewig, unser Schiff, die starke Schiff. Es hat auf alle Jammen, unser Schiff sich schon geglitscht. Auf dem Reiten, auf dem Teuten, auf dem Schwarzen fort's die Itzt. Jede Qualie hat gepatscht sie, ungetan mit ihr a Stift. Doch sie geht beschallem weiter, unser Schiff, die alte Schiff. Nicht kein Kriegsschiff ist sie Brüder, nit kein Panzerschiff all nein. Doch an Tagen gresten Feier, kein sie frei und sicher gehen. Frag nicht, wie es ist unmöglich, sich zu machen, aber grief. Unser Schiff ist fest, ist ein und einzig. Unser Schiff, die Schillerschiff. Our Ship by Morris Rosenfeld. How many ships go under and do not reach their shores? Our ship goes proudly with assurance, although perilous is the route. She laughs at the biggest storms. In the wild and deepest seas, our ship is sturdy and eternal. Our ship, the strong ship. Oh, on all these seas has our ship already glided. On the red, on the dead, on the black one she sails now. Each wave has hit her and left its imprint on her. Yet she peacefully goes on. Our ship, the ancient ship. Not a battleship is she, brothers, not a Panzer ship, oh no. Although against the biggest fire, she can easily and securely stand. Don't ask how, it's impossible to make any comparison. Our ship is unique. Our ship, the serene ship. Thank you.
Subscribe to the three Jewish values that we talk about often in the Shula. Tzedakah, justice; tikkun olam, repair of the world, making the world a better place; and menschlichkeit, human decency. And you've had this in you since your earliest times, and they've developed so nicely. I'm going to relate a story now that you remember well, I think. It may embarrass you a little bit. But when you were 10 years old, you, and I think it was with your friend Joanna Lang, you wanted to sell cookies and lemonade at the entrance to Riverside Park at 91st Street, right across from our building. And I thought, probably wrongly, that it was a little unseemly to be asking money right in front of our building for cookies and lemonade. But you wanted to have that experience, and you were upset when I said I didn't think it was a good idea. So you went to your room, and then you came back maybe about an hour later and said, what if we took the proceeds and donated it to feed children in Kosovo? What would you say then? And I said, how could you say no? So there was the power of persuasion, and in fact, turning something into a very positive thing, showing again the values of tzedakah, tikkun olam, and menschlichkeit. So, Sylvie, you are a mensch. There is no doubt about it. And I know that you will use your wonderful qualities throughout your life to do wonderful things for people and for the world. And I love you very much.
And unfortunately, I have to read to make sure that I don't cry. Sylvie, I hope you know how much you're loved and how proud your whole family is of you today and every day. In your talk, you spoke about the wisdom of the ancient people, and I was thinking how wise they were to plan a ceremony at a time like this. And it's particularly telling because in the past year and in the sports you loved so much. Watching you write a clearly thought out science lab report or make an unassisted double play at first base is really a thrill. You're a natural competitor, and it's been fun to see how happy you are to pass me in height. You have had a head start with Steve Madden's shoes all these years, but now it's becoming the real thing. And you also have a sweetness, as you've shown in your kind attention to your favorite teacher, Mrs. Glick, this year as she's been sidelined with a difficult pregnancy. And I know she's appreciated that, as have many others that you've been sweet to. You have a clear sense of identity, and you've appreciated the Jewish cultural identity that you've gained at Yiddish school, and really never complained about all the school and sports events that you missed to come here for 7 years of Wednesday afternoons. You have a deep love of family, and you are so thrilled that your cousins could be with you here today. You have always had a profound sense of fairness, but now you have a growing flexibility, which you've added and is really wonderful. You are
My first memory of the West Side Yiddish Cultural School was going to Josh Ehrlich's bar mitzvah when I was in kindergarten. It's hard,
but I just wanted to say that in these past years, me and Alex have both grown up slightly, and I'm beginning to see how lucky I am to have a brother I can laugh with at the end of the day. And Alex, I hope we can laugh till we grow old. Congratulations on your mitzvah. I love you.
Alex, I want to tell you how proud I am of the job you did and all the work you put into it. It's been really very, very interesting watching you do this project and participating with you. And one of the things that impressed me most was how you made a point to make this project a search for your own identity and try to learn who you were and how you fit into the world. And though this is a lifelong process, finding out who we are, it was very reassuring to me as your mother that you were right on target in adolescence trying to figure out your identity. But really, through your study of this African tribe, the Lemba, with whom you developed a very close connection, you also took on a perspective of Judaism that was inclusive and not exclusive. And you based your feelings on scientific data that were colorblind. And you did this with a sense of adventure and a great sense of humor. And I found all this so hopeful and so exciting. I really look forward to
Well, Alex, after today's wonderful talks by you and Sylvia, I'm so proud of Alex, who prepared and rehearsed so diligently for today's talk. And when I think about the rigor in Australia, who got stranded in the Australian outback, and the relationship with the young Aborigine tribesmen, The young boy in this film is about 9 years of age and educated very properly in the English. All through his life, we would spend hours where he would tell me things that were very important to him. The plot of the latest Power Rangers, how a Pikachu card outweighs all others, and lately, the latest trades from Diablo 3 or specific logo language commands are his favorite subjects. I understand this content probably even less than the Aborigine listening to the tale of two cities. Yet, I stand transfixed and connected through every narrative that Alex weaves. It's for life. This difficult to define attribute that Alex has will serve him well, and I love him for it. I'm not done. Sorry. As part of this unique community, I leave with a profound respect for our European
culture. In particular, this year, Erland worked with me with great patience on my bar mitzvah research and Annette on my Yiddish poem. I also want to thank Pearl, my current teacher, who makes learning
happen, and if he hadn't devoted countless hours with Pearl, with Ruth, and with myself to make it happen. Our teachers would not have been paid, cookies would not have been bought, Wednesdays would not have happened without Robin. And Robin and I talk a lot, often at 11 o'clock at night, after homework is finished and assignments are done and kids are trying to get ready for bed, about the Shula and about our children and about the wonderful love that we have for this community. So it marks a very bittersweet moment for me as well. I have great pride in both of these two kids. They're both just a little bit older than my own children. And every time I come to one of these, I'm just in awe at how much a 13-year-old can have learned. And I give also great thanks to our teachers, to Annette, to Erland, to Pearl, and to Ruth, who've helped these kids grow into the wonderful people who you've seen here today. So Sylvie and Alex, if you'd come up, please. The certificates read, Sylvie's reads Certificate of Bas Mitzvah, presented by the Westside Yiddish Cultural School, a Workman's Circle Shula, to Sylvie Polsky, Zivya Teibel, who, having completed the required Jewish and Yiddish studies, is hereby honored as a Bas Mitzvah on the 7th day of Sivan, 5762, corresponding to the 19th day of May, 2001. Sylvie. And this, Sylvie, is for you, from all of us.
Thank you.
And to Alex, the Certificate of Bar Mitzvah, presented by the Westside Yiddish Cultural School to Alexander Segal, who, having completed the required Yiddish and Jewish studies, is hereby honored as Bar Mitzvah on this 7th day of Sivan, 5762, the 19th day of May, and now would be a good time to throw that candy. Alex.